Now TP professionals, welcome to this part 3 of functional analysis. If you have completed all the parts prior to this part, then just clap for yourselves because you have cracked the functional analysis process theoretically. Now in case if you have any doubts, if you had any doubts in understanding those parts, because I understand that was more from the theoretical perspective, then that all doubts will be solved in this practical part, right? Practical session. I am just sharing my screen with a practical example where I will be showing you that how you should undertake the functional analysis, right? Enjoy learning. I am just sharing my screen and try to understand the practicality of the entire case. I have taken not a complex case but a detailed case so that you understand all the concepts well. Alright, I'll just share my screen. So now guys, as you can see, we need to understand all the above aspects in case if I take an illustration of an apparel manufacturing unit, right, under the textiles. So if I just take that simple illustration, which is bit detailed, not complex, then let me just show you how you need to undertake that analysis. Now guys, as you can see here, I have created one supply chain model. What I said that once when you go for a functional analysis, you should have a clarity on the supply chain model of that particular business before getting into the functional interview, or before framing the questions around that. You should have an idea about what your client is doing on a very 20,000 feet or on a broad view you should have, and you should also understand the supply chain model, because that's an important part, right? It is not unless until you won't be as a consultant, if you don't know the supply chain model basic parts, then it is then you won't be able to undertake a proper transfer pricing analysis. All right, that's where I always say transfer pricing will increase your analytical skill power. Now under this entire supply chain model, we are understanding a supply chain model of an apparel manufacturing unit. So let us presume that there are two parties and the transaction has been undertaken between foreign holding company which is based out of foreign, and the Indian party which is related party, right? Under this orange color you can see these two things. Now what are the facts of this supply chain model? Let me just also describe that. Now foreign holding company holds or is owner of some brand, right? It has its own R&D team, it has its own designer team, right? So it holds a brand in the foreign jurisdiction, right? And so that's where it's a brand owner. Now there's an Indian entity which is engaged in garment manufacturing and logistics, that is subsidiary of this foreign company which is engaged into garment manufacturing and logistics. Now if you see the supply chain model in apparel manufacturing unit, it starts from sourcing of raw material, spinning and weaving, dyeing and printing, and then after once the designs are given to the garment manufacturing unit, they will manufacture products as per that particular designs and patterns, right? The designs could be also given. So please see, this is just for example I have just given this model. The brands could be also assigned at dyeing and printing level also, the designs basically they could be assigned at dyeing printing level also. So garment is manufactured by the related party, and then there are logistics functions which are happening, and through that logistics it goes to the distributing entity of that again overseas foreign company, right? This is a simple supply chain model which may happen in apparel manufacturing unit. Now you need to understand why I have drawn entire supply chain model. Now you need to understand that what functions are being performed by third party. Then you need to understand what functions are being performed by related party, and what functions are being performed by foreign holding company. So through this supply chain model you can understand that all parts, right? So when you are devising a functional analysis, right, then there would be certain questions pertaining to brand, there could be certain questions pertaining to distribution, there could be certain questions pertaining to manufacturing, there could be certain questions with regard to procurement of raw materials. Now we need to understand also one part, that there could be many scenarios or many different type of scenarios. Like for example, a foreign holding company can provide sourcing support to this manufacturing entity as a part of the excellence or expertise which they have. They can also provide sourcing support to this related party in sourcing of materials due to connects and everything, right? It may be possible, right? Now foreign holding company can also be engaged in approval of these vendors of sourcing and spinning and dyeing vendors, right? It may happen. Then foreign holding company can also support garment manufacturing by providing SOPs. Now this type of things may come right in a supply chain model, and that is where in this entire role, when this product is sold by the related party to the distributing or retail entity of this foreign holding company, then what is the, and then further it is sold to the customers, right? Then what is the remuneration which every party should get in this entire supply chain is what in question, and for which you need to undertake a transfer pricing analysis. Now if I hold a brand, right, and I give rights to sell the products, then technically I should be eligible for remuneration on sales, and that is what we call in general term is royalty, right? If I am providing some technical know-how, okay, this is not example pertaining to apparel manufacturing, but it could be in any of the case. If I am providing my technical inputs in manufacturing, then a technical know-how fees can be charged. If I am providing maintenance services, right, or training to the subsidiary companies, then I should be remunerated for that particular activities which what I am doing for other companies, right? So that is where the base principle of arm's length price. Now if you see this related party is engaged in manufacturing of entire cloth, right? But in that entire manufacturing, the branding is being owned by foreign holding company, right? Now suppose if this related party 1 is also engaged in sourcing of raw materials, spinning, weaving and dyeing, so collecting that, probably that functions would have been done by third party, but this related party is engaged in arranging that entire thing, right? From sourcing till dyeing and printing to bringing that material into its factory premises. Only the sourcing, the related party is doing all such functions. Then obviously related party needs to be remunerated for all such type as well, all these functions as well, right? So that is where we need to understand the supply chain model. Now in case if foreign holding company is providing any sourcing support to related party, then foreign holding company may get sourcing support fees also from the Indian entity. So that is how you need to delineate the transactions, what is the role of which entity in entire function, and you need to understand the characterization of both the entities, and appropriately you need to devise the remuneration model. Correct? I hope I am clear. Now the question could arise, like if there is a relationship between foreign company and its subsidiary, practically, then they will provide instruction at each and every phase, right? They can provide SOPs, but they can provide SOPs, they can provide instructions at each and every phase. But you need to understand one thing, right? That what is the level of that particular function they are performing vis-a-vis the entire roles being performed under the function by both the parties. If that level is much more, they are much more involved at each and every process. They have to, Indian entity has to go with foreign entity and get it approvals, and then you have to act as per their instructions. Then obviously foreign company needs to get more remuneration, because the major role is being played by the foreign entity and not the Indian counterpart, right? Now in case if Indian counterpart has all the teams of sourcing, they are doing spinning, weaving, or they are getting the spinning, weaving done from the third parties also, they are coordinating for that, then they are also coordinating for dyeing, printing, etc. Then Indian party should be generally remunerated on the manufacturing profit, right? Whatever the profit a manufacturer should earn from selling of its product after making payment for royalty to the brand owner, that profit should be retained with the Indian entity, and that is what the concept is. Now if there is an entity which is doing retail of that products, which is taking on wholesale from the Indian entity, and then it is retailing, obviously the margin would be comparatively less as compared to the manufacturing entity. And brand royalty, as they have developed the designs and they have the designs with them, they have the ownership of that designs, obviously the brand royalty would be agreed at arm's length price between the foreign company and the Indian party. I hope this supply chain model, through this supply chain model, this bit detailed model, generally in certain cases like IT service companies, it may not be that much detail when a simple services are development services are provided. Now it also may also happen that if it goes under development services, there are DevOps, then testing is being done, then all such functions are also critical functions are also being done by the Indian counterpart. Then you are required to understand that entire supply chain in IT service industry also, like testing is done by some other entity or some other team, app management is done by some other team, some other team would be marketing that part. So you need to understand that type of functions also, right? When you are dealing in IT industry, which is into core development functions, right? Rather than just acting as per the instructions, there could be. So you need to get that all facts from the client. Now, how do we get that facts? As I said that you need to ask questions to the client. Now, how do you do that? We'll just come ahead. Now, when you're preparing for this functional interview questions, what type of questions you need to ask to draft entire functional analysis, right? So, I have just written here some draft of the questions. I mean, some of the questions pertaining to certain concepts. It could be more also in your case. It depends on case to case basis that what type of questions you need to ask to the client. But now, if generally we take the example of this apparel manufacturing unit, then my questions will start from, so logically I'll start the questions from where the first activity begins, right? Obviously first there would have been some designing of the apparel designing part, and that is where branding would be there at first, and then after the manufacturing gets done. So my questions will start from brand and R&D. So these are just illustrative questions. You don't need to ask the same specific question. In your case, it could be more also, it could be less also. Okay, I hope you understand on that part. So for branding part, I may go to the client and I can ask that is there any designing team in overseas entity, whether India team provides any inputs with regard to designing. So whether India team or probably whether the retailer teams do provide, because they are into this geography market, right? So in case if they are providing any inputs with regard to designing or not, that also you need to understand. So these are some two questions related to the branding and R&D part. Is there any R&D team over there who researches on the market and then who understands, who do the data analytics and then appropriately take the decision for making this printing this particular type of garment or producing this type of garments. So this is all questions related to branding and R&D, and who holds the IP, who's the IP owner, that could be one of the question. So these are all questions related to branding and R&D. Then sourcing of raw materials. Now whether the parent company is engaged in vendor approval process, as I also explained earlier that it could be engaged. Alright, then are there any SOPs being issued for PO process or any of the supply chain process by the foreign company? So that could be also one type of question, in case if the foreign company is actively involved in entire functions of the manufacturing Indian unit, then they would have also issued SOPs, they would have also issued instructions, etc. that they follow globally. This may happen in general scenario as well. Then who signs the contract with vendors, whether any role is being played by foreign company in negotiating the prices, because pricing is an important factor for any transaction, right? So whether foreign company's approval is required for pricing process or not, correct? Who signs the contract with vendors? See, this is how you will be understanding the role of the foreign entity in the business of the India entity, correct? Then who is responsible in case of quality issues in raw material? So in case if the vendor has been approved by the foreign company, however the quality of material which has been received by the Indian entity is not as up to the standards, then who will bear the quality, all those expenses, will be responsible in case of quality issues in raw materials. So that type of questions you can ask with regard to your sourcing function, right? Then which team coordinates with the vendor, then whether any support is being provided by foreign company in procurement process. Sort of these questions you can ask to the client when you are making your client when you are preparing for a functional interview to undertake that functional interview with your client or HODs. Then you should have set of such questions. There could be more questions also once when you go on ground, because on ground you will take more time to understand the process and to question more things. So you need to understand. And also there is one advice that in case if the functional interview is going for a long time, I would suggest you to record on your laptops or probably in mobile devices. You should take the entire recording of that interview, and once when you come back to your office or probably once when you start drafting the function analysis part, you should listen to that recording, and appropriately you can jot all the points, because everything cannot be remembered just by way of writing 1-2 statement. You can record that entire thing and you can explain that process when you are drafting the function analysis. We'll just move ahead. Then sourcing of raw material, then production manufacturing. Now, who decides production schedule? Who is responsible for maintaining of adequate quantity of raw materials? Is there any SOP for same? How is average quantity determined? Who is responsible in case of idle capacity? Who is responsible for product quality? Who is responsible for supervising the production output? See, wherever I am trying to say who is, that means either foreign company or Indian company or both, the teams of both company. And if there are teams of both company, then which team performs, major amount of functions in that particular function, right? Major amount of activities in that particular main activity, right? Which team performs that you need to understand, so that you will be able to properly, precisely draft the entire functional analysis, right? Then after, uh, there could be questions pertaining to warehousing of raw material and finished goods. So is there any help given by foreign company in warehousing? So where the raw material is getting warehoused, where the finished goods are being warehoused. So does the Indian entity only manufactures and directly sends the goods to the foreign entity? It just warehouses for 2-3 days and send it to the foreign entity, or foreign entity has their own warehouses on the ports, etc. So such type of questions are also relevant, wherein from where you can understand the role of the foreign entity in particular function, right? Then who manages the logistics and delivery process? There could be questions revolving around that as well. Then which entity undertakes marketing activities? Now guys, when we are discussing about the marketing function, I would also like to draw your attention on certain aspects when you're particularly dealing with marketing function, right? Now, what is the support of parent company in marketing of goods? Now, like for example, there could be a global brand, like there could be Adidas or H&M. They are global brands, like, so they have their whole global presence in the entire world, right? So if that is the kind of support that they are giving to the Indian entity, because Indian outlet of H&M or Adidas, they would be, generally they would receive that benefits of the global branding also, right? So if the global parent company is restricted to that part only, or they are providing some additional materials also to Indian entity to help, to help them in marketing in India, that also needs to be understood. Because if they are doing some extra activity for particular India entity, like it may happen in many major brands, that if they are doing any event at probably at India level, then it will obviously benefit to the India entity, and for which they should also get the remuneration. So transfer pricing officer will come across such type of things as well. I'll also just discuss with you one issue. There is one famous issue of AMP in this entire marketing function, right? So what is AMP? AMP is basically advertisement, marketing and promotion expenditure, which is being incurred by the Indian entity. So what is this transfer pricing issue all about? That's a controversy basically. AMP is a controversial issue. What transfer pricing officer says, so when AMP occurs, so AMP occurs when an Indian subsidiary or associate enterprise of a foreign entity spends too much than on AMP, that is the amount spent by them on AMP is much higher than what is spent by legal distinct and separate enterprise performing the same or similar functions or under the similar conditions. Now what will happen? So this creates basically marketing intangible or probably marketing services, additional marketing services. What happens? Let me just assume that it's a related party brand overseas and it has its subsidiary in India, right? Now that subsidiary entity is also incurring some expenditure, that is marketing expenditure over and above. Over and above what? Over and above the same type of entities which are incurring the marketing expenditure. And the differential part, so now suppose out of 100 rupees what they have sold, right? If the in the control arrangement there are 5 rupees which have been incurred by the Indian entity towards the marketing expenses, while vis-a-vis if the same 100, if the in same independent scenario, then if 100 rupees the other entities are incurring only 2 rupees, right? Marketing expenditure only 2%, while vis-a-vis this is 5%. So then additional 3% TPO will adjust and reduce from the reduce from the profit and loss account, or they will adjust to the international transaction that value. Why so? Because they understand that even the marketing expenditure should be at arm's length. So that is where the issue of AMP lies. Technically, so you can see technical judgments of Maruti Suzuki Limited also. I am not quoted here, but this is one of the very sticky issue that happens, and when transfer pricing officers go beyond and they understand that this is basically promotion not only India level, but these entities are helping to promote the brand on a global level, and that is where they should be remunerated, or at least that there should be this deduction of particularly expenditure to avoid more than normal amount of expenditure being done by the entities under independent scenario. Hope that clarifies, right? That is the concept of AMP. You can search it on public domains and you can understand also that concept. I have just placed in a very simple lucid way, but it's a detailed concept. You can also read the judgment of Maruti Suzuki, which was delivered by I think Delhi High Court, or I don't remember the exact High Court, but yes, it's a pending issue. I think it has not been sorted out yet. As of I know, but if that has been sorted, it would be an interesting judgment to read also. So you can read that judgment of Maruti Suzuki as well. So then there could be also, when you are performing, we are asking the questions of the marketing activities. Then there could be also issues with regards to permanent establishment of foreign entity in case of marketing. So you must be knowing that, marketing people do travel in overseas countries and stay there, and they do the marketing activities, right? So technically they may create a P in that particular country. You may check, on this aspect also, that how a P is created by way of doing a marketing activity by a foreign entity in other jurisdiction. So in case if any marketing people comes in India and do the marketing, and through which there has been a sale happening of the India entity, then that profits are also attributable to the functions which the Indian entity is undertaking, and appropriately tax will be levied by the tax authorities on that particular portion of income. So you need to understand that part also, that these are certain controversial areas that when you are writing, because you are going to document entire function analysis, right? So when you document, you should be cautious about certain points, right? What you need to write and how you need to place that in report, and what are the actual conduct. If it is as per the actual conduct, then you need to take a position as well, that whether it is more material, whether there lies any materiality in that particular part or not. Correct? I hope that clarifies. Now, then after you can ask questions on post sales support. All right. So what could be the post sales support in the, in this entire chain? So in let's say suppose if there is a good which has been sold to the customer, now customer has returned the good to the retailer, the product, then whether that product goes to this main entity, or probably that product comes to this related party or not. Correct. We are just understanding by way of some example, but yeah, this may happen. Like in case if you are selling machines, in case if there is a fault, then which party will be responsible for doing the maintenance activity on that machine, or whether providing guarantee or warranty on that machine. So this could happen in such arrangements as well. So post sales support is also an important function which you should inquire from the client. Now this is all inquiry on the functions. Now what about risk? You may ask that now you understood the functions roles, but what type of questions related to risk you may ask. So let me just disclose certain generic risk which may happen in each and every business, right? There could be more number of risks depending on the type of business, but yeah, I have given here the general overview. So now these are types of risk that you need to factor out, and that you need to understand the role of both the parties, who's assuming what amount of risk, which party is assuming what amount of risk. So first is business risk or market risk. So what is business or market risk? So business or market risk arises when a firm is subject to adverse sales condition due to either increased competition in the marketplace, or adverse demand condition within the market, or the inability to develop markets or position products to service targeted customer. So this is what market risk or business risk all about. It is about business, right? Which entity bears the market or business risk? Simple question as that. In case if tomorrow sales may not happen, that which entity has to do the efforts, or which entity will bear the risk of that market risk, whether that entity will be compensated by the associate enterprise or not. That's a question, right? Because if it is getting compensated, then that entity is taking less risk and the other entity is taking that risk, right? So this may happen in captive service providers, where they are dependent only on customer to give the orders, and customer has to bear this market risk, right? So it can also happen in the other models as well. Please don't please be flexible in understanding all the concepts, because business is entirely about flexibility, right? It will always change. Every case will be different, and that is where transfer pricing has its own charm, because you cannot replace the AI with this. You cannot have some set of questions and you can conclude on the transfer pricing project. No, it will be not replaced by AI, at least in coming 5 to 10 times. Yeah, if the intelligence grows to the level where it can understand the business model, it can determine itself only, then then also there will be business or economics which would be can be only understood and by the human mind, not by the artificial intelligence, right? And that is where you guys are going to be that TP professionals. So embrace yourselves. Yes. So I'll just move on. Then there is capacity utilization risk. Capacity utilization risk basically is related to the possibility of non-recovery of fixed costs being incurred. Now this may happen due to circumstances such as lack of production, or due to lack of demand, or inability to recover the prices, etc. Then there could be the service liability or product failure risk. That is, service liability risk is borne by a company when its service offerings fail to perform at accepted or advertised standards and the company is required to compensate the customer or to undertake a defect resolution at its own cost, right? It's a service liability or product failure risk. And in case of product failure, we saw that example, right? In case of product is returned or it's a damaged product, then which entity bears that risk? Now, credit and collection risk. So again, credit and collection risk arises when an entity supplies product and services to a customer in advance of customer payment and runs the risk of default of such payment, right? So who will bear that credit and collection risk? Then foreign exchange fluctuation risk. Foreign exchange fluctuation rate relates to the potential variability of the profits that can arise because of changes in foreign exchange rates and arises whenever the transacting currency of an entity is different from its functional currency. Okay, if I am in India and if I am making a bill in USD, then probably whenever the remuneration may come, I have to bear that risk of, in case if there is a loss, right? If the rate has gone down, then I may have to bear that particular amount of risk because I have to prepare my accounts in INR, right? So that is what foreign exchange fluctuation risk is all about. And then there could be many risks such as infringement risk, that is a risk related to the designing and manufacturing of patented products. Generally IP comes in that part, like pharma and etc. industries deal with this IP parts, and in case if the medicines are copied, in case of there is any product getting copied, it may infringe the IP, and which entity is responsible to protect that IP, which entity is legally has to take legal actions, and which entity has to bear some sort of risk related to this IP being infringed, right? And then there could be inventory risk, that is in case of slow moving or obsolete inventory, which entity will, whether the entity will take back the goods which it has delivered, or how the risk will be allocated between the parties, or probably which entity assumes the entire risk. So these are type of risk questions that you should ask and you should understand from the client, right? I hope this entire thing clarifies. Now, okay, so the main part, now in the next video what we are going to see is that how we are going to use AI to draft entire functional analysis in a TP document, right? So be ready for the next part. I am going to see you in the next video, but before that, in case if you have not seen the earlier part, please go through that entire parts, and then after only you start this practical part, because this will be again a practical aspect. But before that, just clear all the theoretical aspects which I have explained in the previous videos. I hope you are enjoying this entire session. I'll meet you in the next video. Thank you.